Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our next episode of Steps for Successful Secondary Transition Planning. Today our topic is going to be post-secondary education and training, employment, and independent living goals. I am Diane Perry. I'm a parent advisor at the PEAL Center. And the PEAL Center, in this graphic, it represents the 6 key strategies used by PEAL to accomplish all the work that we do. Families and youth are the center of our work. And then we're surrounded by the communities and the professionals who work with them. And as you'll see, we have many services that we do at the PEAL Center. In regards to outreach and resources, and we are what's called a parent training and information center. So we help and guide families through the special education system, understanding their rights, the processes, and I do that as a parent advisor through individual assistance and trainings, just like we're doing today. And then we also have many partnerships across the state that we provide resources with and work on various grants and other opportunities to help the families and the youth that we serve.
And my name is Michael Storr, and I work for the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, the Coalition, and NTACT, or National Technical Assistance Center, the Coalition, is a jointly funded project of the Office of Special Education Programs and Rehabilitation Services Administration at the federal government level. We just started in October of 2020 with a 5-year grant to support educational entities at the state and local level, as well as vocational rehabilitation programs across the country. In Pennsylvania, that would be OVR, along with supporting youth, families, and agencies that provide services to transition age youth. NTACT is made up of a variety of university partners, including the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, where I'm employed, as well as our other university partners, which include East Tennessee State University, the George Washington University, Portland State University, the University of Kansas, Maryland, and Oregon. The primary outcome or goal of the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, the collaborative, is that all students and youth with disabilities will be prepared to graduate from high school with the knowledge, skills, and supports to be successful in life. Some of our focus areas include increasing their enrollment in post-secondary education, having students obtain credentials as they are graduating and going into programming once they exit school, that they're engaged in competitive integrated employment positions and engaged in their communities.
Great. And before I give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about today, I do want to mention that we have a guest speaker joining us today, and that will be Lilly Sellers. And Lilly, did you want to just give a brief introduction? Because I know later on you're going to give us more detail.
Sure. My name is Lilly, and I am a senior in high school right now. I'm about to graduate this year in 2021. I'm a student with a physical disability, and I am a board member and intern for the Pennsylvania Youth Leadership Network. Thank you so much.
Great. So today we have a couple objectives that we're going to be reviewing. We will be discussing what families need to know about putting this topic into practice, and that's kind of been this whole series. You know, we are really trying to give that hands-on, what is that next action that the IEP team, what the family, the student, what is that next action that you can do that was going to apply to your IEP to help you with a smoother transition. We're going to discuss the importance of post-secondary education and training, employment, and independent living goals during that transition planning. And we also, the Transition Discoveries Guide was developed by collecting voices and experiences from youth, families, and stakeholders. And it highlights the key elements that make a successful transition from high school to adult life. This is a collection of indicators and sub-indicators that can be used as a roadmap to guide your transition plan. And we're going to give you more details in regards to that as well. Some really key reminders that we have here that are really important. is that, you know, transition services, these are just a couple, you know, things that we always like to tell, and you can't hear some of these enough, right? So transition services must be addressed by the law at turning 14, but you can start anytime. You can always start much sooner than that 14, because, you know, you're always thinking, you know, as a parent, as I'm a parent as well, my son's a lot older now. He's going to be 28 in a couple weeks, but, you know, while he was in that transition phase, or even before that, I was thinking, you know, ahead, what's it going to be like when he's done in school? You know, what is it we can be doing to, you know, reach those goals for him? And that actually goes nice smoothly with, you know, planning and writing a vision for your child. You know, you really need to be starting off like we did for David. You know, we actually wrote a vision for him. And, you know, as he got older and as he became his own self-advocate, he took over his own vision, and he brought to the table, and he came to the IEP team and said, this is what I like to do. These are the things I don't like, you know, all of that. So writing that vision is really important. And we can't emphasize enough that every time we do one of these sessions, that it's really important that you think about that vision. And if you don't have one, that is something that, you know, as a student that you might want to consider. And as parents, you might want to consider doing that for your child and or assist them in getting that vision in writing. It's important that whole IEP team talks about that, because that's how you're going to get that coordinated effort. That's how all that planning is going to happen, is with that good information that you get and that you think about for your future as well. So the PEAL Center and now NTACT, the collaborative, will be, we've been doing these webinar series, and we had 8 focus areas that we were going to address. And we started these back in September of 2020, and they are recorded on PEAL's website. So you can go to pealcenter.org and check out our website and see what are, you know, some of the sessions prior, because we are recording them along as well, so that you can be reminded of, you know, what is it that I needed to learn about this particular topic or that particular topic about transition. And we will be doing this all the way through May of 2021. But now we're going to briefly go over what that looks like.
Great, thanks, Diane. So the first 3 sessions, as Diane mentioned, are available on the PEAL Center site under Transition Tuesdays if you missed them. We have talked about youth and young adult driven programming and the importance of that. Also, the importance of outside agency collaborations. So looking at agencies such as the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, looking at county-based intellectual developmental disability services, mental health services, and so forth. Our last session that we did back in November, we discussed age-appropriate transition assessments. And today, we are going to be addressing helping a young person, a student, and their family best prepare for the future by looking at the development of post-secondary education and training, employment, and independent living goals for once the student exits high school. So as Diane mentioned, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about transition discoveries. And transition discoveries, you have a flyer that was included in your handouts for today's session, so we urge you to go and look at that. There is an excellent website, and it's up, it's live, it's running, it's transitiondiscoveries.org. And transition discovery, it includes indicators of effective transition practices, and these were identified by youth and their families. Each indicator is defined by key elements or sub-indicators that lead to successful transition practices as agreed upon by everyone working with that young person. These 55 sub-indicators are described through definitions, characteristics, outcomes, and meaningful stories told by youth, families, and transition stakeholders. In looking at this section of the Transition Discovery site, and in talking about post-secondary goals, what you'll notice is that there are 4 different areas where these can be highlighted. One is in transition planning. Another section is that section on post-secondary education and training, and then the section on employment that provides information and supports regarding competitive integrated employment, and then independent living and community engagement. So these are all different sections, on that Transition Discoveries website. And again, refer to that flyer that's in your handouts. So in this next section, we are going to look at post-secondary education and training, employment, and independent living goals. In this section, we are going to go ahead and address and give you an overview of what these are and how these best support your sons and daughters, students that are in high school and being successful in adult life. So as we look at this first section here regarding post-secondary goals, it's important to note that these are based on age-appropriate transition assessments. And we mentioned back in November, we presented a whole webinar on assessment. And what we're really looking at here in defining those post-secondary goals is looking at interest, preference, skills, and abilities. It's important to note that this is not the same thing as an IEP measurable annual goal. Those goals are occurring in school, and those are based on skill deficits. That would be the measurable annual goals. The post-secondary goals are something that will be occurring after high school. And the statements reflect what that student plans to do around those three areas we've mentioned. So looking at further education and training, employment, and independent living. The post-secondary goals are listed in two places in the IEP. You can find it in present education levels, and they should be addressed there. And you can also find them in the transition section of the IEP in Pennsylvania, which is section 3, and we often refer to it as the transition grid, because in that section, section 3, it provides information regarding the post-secondary goals that a student has, the courses of study that they're engaged with, and then looking at the activities and services that student will be engaged with for that IEP year. So as we mentioned, in finding the documentation for post-secondary goals, you should find those listed in the transition grid section of the IEP. And in looking at the transition grid section of the IEP, again, there's a box for that in the grid that says the post-secondary goal. And they're actually divided into 3 separate sections. So there's a section for further education and training, one for employment, and one for independent living. In the present ed level section of the IEP, the areas where you should be able to see a reference to the post-secondary goals is under academic and functional levels, parental concerns, strengths and needs. And as a reminder, these need to be updated annually. So as the IEP gets updated, that transition section of the IEP should also be updated. In figuring out what to put in the areas for post-secondary goals, it's important that we're considering what that student's information from the assessment that they were given provides. And it's important also, I think, for both families and young folks and working with your school staff, your guidance counselors, transition counselors, teachers, OVR staff, to use a number of resources that are out there. We reference a couple here. One is a site called ONET, and that is a site that's sponsored by the Federal Department of Labor. And in the ONET site, what's really nice is it provides information on various types of career paths, and it indicates what skills are needed, what types of education and training is needed for a particular career area, where there are jobs available, and so forth. So it's really helpful for students to kind of narrow down maybe what type of employment they want someday and what type of education and training they would need to obtain that type of employment, and also helps kind of define where they may want to live someday. The other site that we mention on this slide is the Job Accommodations Network. And JAN, or the Job Accommodations Network, is an organization that helps individuals with disabilities look at what types of supports and accommodations are available in the workplace. And again, this is a helpful decision-making tool that can help a young person and their family define what types of supports are available in obtaining a job. So in this next section, I'm going to turn this over to Diane in a minute, and she's going to talk a little bit more specifically about each of these areas. So again, looking at post-secondary education and training, employment, and independent living. And with that, Diane, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. And as Michael referenced earlier, he said the transition grid. Well, this is the transition grid. And many of you who have had your IEPs, certainly this is very familiar to many of the professionals as well. This is that section that we're going to be really focusing on. You see that arrow looking right at that, goal area. So for this one in particular is the post-secondary education and training goal section. So, and also I want to remind you, also in your handouts, number one is this PowerPoint, but there's also another handout that is referencing a handout from thinkcollege.net, and it has a really good resource of all kinds of different goals that would be in any of these three sections. So you really want to look at that handout also that we gave you, and that might give you some more ideas around the goals. So for this particular one, go to the next slide. You'll see some samples here is what we gave you here. And for example, Brian plans to attend a 2-year technical program. Could be maybe what a goal would be in that section for the post-secondary. Now, Brian's goal as listed, would be appropriate if he was like 14. But, as he gets older, maybe closer to 18, that goal might actually include a career area, such as Brian plans to study a career in plumbing or something like that. So, it's going to change every year because, the needs or what the student wants, because, a lot of times, students do change their mind quite often. And so even as an adult, I keep changing my mind, but even when you're in school, you continue to think about, what is it that I really want to do? What is it that I really want to study? And then there's just some other various goals there that you can review here. Vicky's goal wants to attend an employment training program for food service. So she obviously has an interest in that as well. And Chris plans to attend a nursing school. So, there's a whole lot that can be, taken from that goal, but you need to have some type of overarching goal. Now, this is for the employment grid. Again, it's the same grid, and we're just pointing out where this overarching goal would be placed. So some examples for employment goals, Jesse has a goal of working in the travel agency, while Andre plans to seek employment in a video production after graduation from college. Now, when we talk about employment, and specific to Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is what's called an employment first state. So that means that school teams are preparing all students of all abilities for employment. So almost every student will have an employment goal on their IEP. So it's really important to think about that. Students who say they want to go to college are preparing for employment. So, even though that's what they're doing, they are preparing for some type of employment. Students with intense, complex needs are among the few who may not be preparing for employment yet, but they will be, which is why appropriate transition assessments would be helpful to really target on the student's interest. You might know some students who say, I don't want to work, I want to collect my benefits. Well, they still must be prepared for employment. So even though you might hear some of these different things, some, students, like, I don't want to work, well, but they still have to be prepared for employment. And then that third area is the independent living. And that's, the independent living goal doesn't necessarily always mean living by yourself. Sometimes depending on the student, this goal is not filled in, but I always challenge an IEP team to think outside the box for every student. The following slides, we're going to get into a couple more detail about independent living, and it might give you some other ideas about thinking about outside the box when, you're saying, oh, well, this child doesn't really need an independent living goal. Well, you might have a change of heart or a change of thinking over the next couple slides, because you really want to be thinking about, developing skills. That's what independent living is, and you need those skills, for example, paying bills or traveling in the community, grocery shopping, or, using your debit card or credit card, things like that. Some other considerations, thank you. You know, when you're thinking about the student, does the student have certain needs related to some of the areas that we have focused here? You know, communication, or maybe they're using an assistive technology device. You know, do we need to really, does the student need assistive technology? Or, you know, so do we need to do some type of other assessment for that? You know, is there a recommendation for the team? Because as a student gets older, that might look differently as well. You know, community and civic participation. You think about, is the student registered to vote? Where can they learn about different candidates? You know, like that can be, you know, an area that you're going to be thinking of. Does the student know their rights as a person with a disability, and what that looks like to go voting? How involved is the student in their own community? Thinking about, you know, their own involvement and maybe different various places that they can volunteer. You know, financial literacy, and that you can just unpack a whole bunch around financial literacy in regards to, you know, preparing for independent living. You know, when you're looking at relationships, you know, what are some meaningful activities that you can be thinking about, you know, around social and recreational opportunities as a high school student, in school and out of school? You know, and you really want to think about these things. Again, you could reference some of this in that vision I talked about. When you're writing that vision, you know, for your child, or the student is writing and talking about what they want in life. These are some things you really want to get documented, and you're going to be able to pull from that vision a lot of that probably within the independent living section of this IEP. And then, of course, there's recreation and fitness. You know, there's always all kinds of different areas that you can be thinking about. You know, how are they going to be taking public transportation? Are they going to be, you know, riding a bike? You know, do they know how to follow a map? And how do we get to some of these activities that way too? You know, how would you get to, you know, when you can, you know, maneuver around the world a little bit more? How do you actually get there? Things like that. And just a few more other possible indicators that a student may need goals and services for independent living areas. And we just listed, you know, several of them here. This is not an exhaustive list, but we certainly put a couple of them out there for you to really be thinking about when you're considering, you know, writing a goal. Now, these considerations don't mean you cannot live independently. It just means that goals need to be set to address different issues. Okay, so, you know, when you're considering and thinking about, you know, a student that might have some behavior and discipline problems, that doesn't mean that student may not be able to live on their own at some point. But, you know, you do need to address the issues and figure out, is there something under this section that we need to be working on in order for them to be, you know, living independently as much as possible. You know, my son, you know, he always told us, Dave, and everybody who knows David will tell you, David always said, I'm moving out, no mom, no dad, no Zachary, which was his brother. So it was like, you know, he knew he had a goal. I'm out of here. He's not quite out of the house yet, but we're always still working on that. You know, it still is an option, you know, even as they leave school, but we're still preparing. You know, it's all that preparation work that you do as an IE in school and as an IEP team you have to consider. And then lastly, here's just some more examples as far as actual goals. You know, the only time independent living would not maybe have a goal and services activity is if the student is already independent. And this is something that would be in any type of assessment that would have been done as well. But here are just some more examples, and we're going to get into real examples over the next couple slides, but we just thought we would put a couple up on the slide here, you know, that might be able to help you think outside the box. You know, Jill's goal is to live in a supported apartment and to access community resources and programs with supports. So, you know, that tells me, you know, supports. Maybe she's having a roommate, you know, maybe she has staff, you know, from different agencies that are coming in and helping her, you know, live more independently in that apartment. So, you know, just really think about, again, outside the box sometimes for independent living.
Great, thanks, Diane. And as we mentioned a few slides ago, it's important that it's considered as the IEP is updated each year, that you're also looking at the transition section of the IEP being updated. So another important point to discuss regarding post-secondary's goals is the need to update these goals at least annually to reflect the students' interests and experiences as they continue to engage in the classes they're taking and the activities and services they're being provided each year. As we discussed earlier in the presentation, the student, the family member, and professionals should be able to easily locate information regarding the student's post-secondary goals, including progress on the related services and activities, and any needed adjustments to those post-secondary goals, including the assessment-backed reasons for these changes. All of this information should be written in the present ed levels section of the IEP. It's also important to remember that change is normal, and most students adjust or change their post-secondary goals as they go through high school. This is a normal process and reflects the students gaining a better understanding of themselves and their future goals. We now are very excited to present our next section of today's presentation. If you have participated in our other webinars thus far this year, you'll remember that we had Lilly Sellers, and Lilly is a dual enrolled student at Boiling Springs High School in the South Middleton School District and at Harrisburg Community College. Lilly is going to be joining us in a minute, and we're also going to be referencing two of our other students or young folks that have joined us on some of our past webinars. Shania Jones, a student in the Pittsburgh Public School District, and Josh Habacker, a graduate of the Daniel Boone School District. So now I'm going to turn this over to Lilly, and she's going to walk us through the three post-secondary goal areas and share the goals that she, Shania, and Josh have as part of their secondary transition planning.
Thank you so much. So I personally,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I personally have a goal of attending a post-secondary college or university after graduation to pursue a career in public speaking and advocacy. So over my high school career, I kind of more defined this goal, and I do know which college I will be attending and my major. And it really did take me a while to figure out this because for me personally, I do have a physical disability. I use a power wheelchair full time. And so I had to think about also my independent living goal in the future if I wanted to live in a dorm or at home. So I'm kind of like how far it is and how accessible it is really important to me personally. Um, okay, so Shania has a goal of attending a 2 or 4 year college after graduation. And Josh has a post-secondary education training goal of an on-the-job training after high school. So I have a goal of pursuing a career in the area of public speaking or advocacy after graduation. So sort of how I refine this goal is I would like to go into the major of political science, and even I found a college that has a minor in disability studies. Shania has a goal of competitive employment after graduation, and Josh has an employment goal of competitive employment after high school.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to introduce Shania Jones, who's a student in the Pittsburgh Public Schools, and ask her to talk a little bit about her plans and employment goals after graduation.
Yes, hi, I'm Shania Jones. I am in 12th grade and I am a senior at Carrick High School. After graduation, I would like to attend a two-year college at CCHC or Morgan State or IUP. I want to go there because I want to become a therapist because I'm interested in helping people.
Shania, how do you think you've learned about those goals and why they might be a good fit for you?
I'll answer the second question. It's a fit for me because I like to help people out. And the first question was, because I have friends that graduated this year too. So they would like to go there too. So they told me to look into it, and it looks real fascinating for me.
Thank you. Shania, can you talk a little bit about your IEP and how has that helped you develop those goals, and maybe who at your school has helped you move towards achieving them?
My guidance counselor has been helping me out, and I had a meeting my last meeting was in May, and it helped me out and figure out my goals in life. My guidance counselor, Miss Polero, has been getting in contact with me, helping me by helping me go step by step into figuring out how to be consistent with my goals.
Great. Are you taking any classes at school that could also help you with that?
Yes, I am in a SOS program, and they're really, really helpful. And I'm going to I want to shadow people to help me go through with my goal.
Excellent. Thank you. And what do you think could be some next steps that would help you reach your goals? You just mentioned job shadowing or maybe talking to a therapist. So I know that's one of them. Is there anything else you think that could really help you?
Yes, applying for a job after graduation, a part-time job, and to fill out the applications for the colleges and see what else I need to do to see if I can get into the colleges.
All right. Well, excellent. Thank you, Shania. I know you will definitely achieve your goals, but thank you for sharing today.
You're welcome.
So for the independent living section, my goal is to live independently at some point after graduation. And this is kind of a more in the future goal for me, because I have a little more difficulties with daily tasks, and I'll kind of have to think about how nursing and just living independently works. So I probably will um, wait a little bit on that. Maybe I'll get my start in college and work on the academics a little more first. Shania has a goal of living on her own with family support after graduation. And Josh has an independent living goal of living at home with parental and agency supports after high school.
Hi, my name is Nikki Hebecker and this is Joshua. Today we are sharing Josh's independent living goal and his final transition individualized education plan, live at home with supports and services. While the overarching goal is simple, it is comprehensive and years in the making. In developing this goal, Joshua invited his transition team to join us in finalizing his vision of transitioning into adulthood utilizing his life course framework tools. Joshua invited my husband and I, his special education teacher, his regular education teacher, his transition coordinator, special education director, learning coach, instructional assistant, music teacher, speech therapist, physical therapist, the BCIU transition house teacher, your OVR counselor, and the supports coordinator. Together, a community of practice finalized his individualized education plan, his individual family support plan, and his individual plan for employment based on Joshua's voice, wants, skills, and abilities. Big table and big dreams. Aromas of an amazing meal, laughter, friendship, family, neighbors, professionals were welcomed into our home that not only care for Joshua, but also about him to complete a path by two of our sheroes. Together, our village made the commitment to continue supporting Joshua's quality life filled with value, purpose, meaning, safety, friendship, and love. While our plan looks different than we penciled in due to COVID, Joshua is living a good life at home in his community with supports and services. He is thriving. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Lily. And I know we're going to turn this over to Diane, and she has some reminders just in general for transition. But Lily, thank you again so much. And thank you for sharing Josh's and Shania's story with us.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Yeah, that, you know, it's the power of the voice of our of the youth is just really resonates, and just listening to all three of our youth, you know, sharing their goals, you know, at least for me, you know, it's really powerful. And I hope for our audience today that, you know, you take a little piece of what's, you know, listening to the voice of our youth and where they want to go with that, no matter what gifts and talents they bring to the table. So yeah, a couple reminders that even when the best plans are there, our lives change, as you know, many of us experienced in 2020 with COVID-19. You know, we all might have had the best plans laid out, but you know, our lives changed, the world changed. There's all kinds of different things. So you're always going to have to adjust your plan and your needs along with that, depending on what's happening. But always remember, you're not alone in this process. You know, use those available resources out there. Ask for help. It's a-okay to do that. You know, I didn't get anywhere for my son David anywhere without having to ask people for help. I mean, we have a whole team around us, as well as, you know, as Nikki Haybecker talked about with Josh. You know, she named all these people. You know, you have all these people surrounding you, as I'm sure Lily and Shania do, you know, and that guidance is really important. So use all those resources, you know, use the PEAL Center, use NTACT, all of the information that we're providing you in this whole series of webinars that we're giving you on transition. And speaking of that, our next session will be February 23rd, and that will be on the thoughtful course of study section on that grid. So we're going to be focusing on that. And as you see, our flyer is still there. Obviously, you know, go to our website. If you know anybody who would still like to register, there's always time to register. Once you register, you only have to do it one time, and you're able to hop on any of our sessions. We still have 3 more after our February one, because like I said, we're going to go through May. Everything is on the PEAL website, PEAL Center / Transition Tuesdays. All of the handouts are there, and all of the PowerPoints are there as well. And another collaborative that the PEAL Center is doing with the Pennsylvania Council for Exceptional Children is something called Practical Solution Series. And this is around secondary transition as well, from high school to adult life, which will be on Thursday, February 11th from 4 to 5. And there's going to be some question and answer around that. You can register for that on our website, and that link is also there here on the slide as well. You'll hear from a panel about challenges, solutions, and resources that have worked for students in transition. So you don't want to miss this opportunity for another collaboration that we are working with the Pennsylvania Council for Exceptional Children.
Great, thank you, Diane. We're going to just talk and leave you with some additional resources. So on this slide, we have resources that are related to post-secondary education and training and employment post-secondary goals. The first document that there is listed there is a really good resource from the PACER Center. And the PACER Center is based in outside of Minneapolis in Minnesota. But that particular resource emphasizes the importance of student-led transition planning in looking at all aspects, including having the student develop their post-secondary goals. Also listed again on this slide are post-secondary education and training goal resources. So included there is a document, a preparation guide that NTACT has put together. There's also a link to Think College, and Diana, I believe, mentioned that earlier, that emphasizes the importance of student and youth engagement in post-secondary training, especially for students with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And there's a link to the NTACT site regarding suggestions for how to best prepare and engage in post-secondary education and training. In employment, areas of post-secondary goals, we mentioned earlier ONET, and there's a link there, as well as the Occupational Outlook Handbook, a site called Youthhood, and then lastly, back to the NTACT site, information regarding how best to prepare for a job and engage in employment. And then this slide talks a little bit about resources around independent living. So included on this site is an assessment called Casey's Life Skills Assessment, a couple regarding healthcare. So Got Transition is a website, and it's through an organization in Florida that deals with transition healthcare issues. The ARC Self-Determination Scale is another assessment looking at independent living ability. We had mentioned in our previous webinars about the Life Course, which is a person-centered planning type of guide or assessment. And then we've listed three different resources around financial planning and financial literacy. Money Smart for Young Adults, themint.org, and Financial Literacy for Teens. So as I mentioned at the beginning of today's presentation, I work for the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, the Collaborative. We're a newly funded center, and we're in the process of working on updating our secondary transition website. For now, you can find all of our past and current materials at transitionta.org, and also our partner site through the George Washington University wintac.org. If you have any questions or would like additional information, please email us at ntact-collab@uncc.edu. And finally, if you haven't done so already and would like to receive our weekly email blast regarding current secondary transition resources and activities, please sign up for our listserv, and you can find that link at the bottom of our homepage on transitionta.org. And with that, I'm going to turn this back to Diane.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone for watching today and supporting our webinar series. You know, again, if you need any assistance, you're not alone. Please feel free to go to our website, pealcenter.org, and there's lots of other resources there, not only about transition, but in every aspect of, you know, helping individuals with disabilities. You can also send us an email at info@pealcenter.org or just call our 800 number. So we really appreciate everyone coming out and watching us today. Again, thanks, many thanks to Lilly, facilitating our guest speakers today, and the voices of Shania and Nikki and her son Josh as well. And for me and Michael, signing off today.